the end of the day, you print more of these things or create more of these things, the value of those things are going to go down, which gets reflected in prices of other stuff like real estate going higher, right? It's pretty simple because you are using your dollar or your currency as a unit of account to purchase other assets in the world. Mom, does that make sense to you? Yes, because you know what? I never thought that I should get money for free. I never thought the government should print money and give it to me to stay home and sit in my house. Mom, you're a smart lady. That's why fiat is a Ponzi. Everybody needs to own Bitcoin. Owning zero Bitcoin is more risky than having a proper allocation. The only wrong allocation to Bitcoin is owning zero.
Hey, Greg, how's it going?
Great to meet you. I'm doing well, thanks.
It's good to meet you too. So there's a temptation for me to kind of want to dive straight into all the weeds of what's going on now. But a lot of the times when I do that, people are like, hey man, I listened to this podcast. It was really great, but I have absolutely no idea what was going on. So
okay.
I would love it if you could kind of, I don't know how clued up your mum is on the macro, but I would love it if you could imagine someone like your mother or like a friend, and she's like, hey Greg, like, I don't know, there's some weird stuff going on with the banks, or like, I don't know why, like, I don't know, I feel like I'm getting poorer, even though on paper, maybe I'm getting richer. Greg, you're an expert in finance, or you've been in finance for 32 years. Do you have any idea what's going on? And yeah, you can maybe paint a high level picture and we can go into the weeds from there.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about, I'll lay the foundation for some of my experience. So I have been in the risk management business, primarily hedge fund business, for over 30 years. I'm a Canadian, so my view could be twisted a little bit from our country called Canada, but in general, my life has been spent trading with Wall Street and with a little bit with London, credit default swaps with London, but mostly trading cash bonds and junk bonds with Wall Street. And macro is very important, but it's a science that is misunderstood and quite honestly practiced by a lot of academics that have no clue. Okay, so when you're listening to the Paul Krugmans of the world and these lazy academics like Stephanie Kelton and her nonsense theory called modern monetary theory, remember that they have never actually practiced managing risk in the real world. So what I like to think I bring to the table is real world experience managing risk, having to understand the macro overlay and how it impacts all different risk assets. And when I say risk assets, I mean anything from equities to bonds to real estate to cash in the bank to managing your credit card risk. Okay, so all of these things are in the context. So you want me to talk like I'm explaining it to my mom. My mom was a pretty smart lady. She's not alive anymore, but when I would talk to my mom about something like this, I would say, Mom, don't you think there's something wrong when the government deposits money in your bank account and has the ability to ask you not to go to work, yet deposits the money in your bank account and then asks you to pay taxes on that money as if it appeared out of nowhere? And in fact, it did appear out of nowhere. The governments and the central banks of the world essentially printed more money. Now, what happens when you increase the supply of something, but the actual utility of the entire globe, called GDP or gross domestic product, has not changed? Well, you print more of the unit of account called a dollar, or in the case of the UK, a pound or a yuan, or, I know you guys are sterling as well. At the end of the day, you print more of these things or create more of these things. The value of those things are going to go down, which gets reflected in prices of other stuff like real estate going higher, right? It's pretty simple because you are using your dollar or your currency as a unit of account to purchase other assets in the world. But if you create more of these things, the units, the value of that unit decreases in its purchasing power of other things that haven't increased in units, like houses. They don't just print houses. You have to manufacture a house. There's real work that goes into building a house. So what happens is you get price inflation, which is created by monetary inflation. Monetary inflation being printing more dollars, printing more pounds. So globally, every single central bank in the world engaged in this practice. They created more units of account, Mom, those dollars that you go to the grocery store to buy food on a weekly basis. They created more dollars, but they didn't create more food. All right. You don't just print more food. Eggs. It has to be grown. So, Mom, do you understand why the price of eggs has gone up? It's not that eggs have become more valuable as a intake. It's that the unit of account that you are buying the eggs with, they made more of them. So it takes more of those same units of account to buy the same eggs. Mom, does that make sense to you? Actually, Greg, yeah, that sort of makes sense to me. You know why? Because when I go to the grocery store, I am exchanging something of value called money for something else of value called a product, but they just created this money out of thin air. There was no work that went into it, absolutely zero work that went into creating that money. So the value of that money went down, and that gets reflected in the price of eggs seeming to go higher. But what really happened is the value of eggs stayed exactly the same, and the number of units of these dollars increased to match the same value of the eggs. Mom, does that make sense to you? Yes, because you know what? I never thought that I should get money for free. I never thought the government should print money and give it to me to stay home and sit in my house. Mom, you're a smart lady. That's why fiat is a Ponzi. Fiat money, which is paper money, is a Ponzi. And that is why you get things like inflation. That's why you get a divergence in the privilege factors for the rich who are closest to the money printer and the poor people who have to work and go to the grocery store, and the rich get richer and the poor actually get poorer. Do you understand that, Mom? Yes, Mom. Yes, son. I understand it. And I hate these fuckers. I hate these fuckers who print money and enrich themselves and make the rest of the world worse off. Sorry. Make the rest of the world worse off. Mom, you see the problem with fiat? Yes, son, I see the problem with fiat. Mom, do you understand why I love Bitcoin so much? Yes, son, I understand why you love Bitcoin so much. Okay, Mom, give me a hug. Thanks, son. I love you. I love you too, Mom. I'm doing this for the kids. There you go. Does that help?
That helps a lot. Really, really nicely painted. And it makes me want to lead on to the fact that these kind of systems have obviously, they've never survived, because where there's an incentive, there's an outcome kind of. And so the incentive is to print. And so they're going to keep printing, keep printing.
Correct.
And so given that these systems never survive and they always eventually collapse, where are we in the cycle of the current system? And where do you think we're going?
Okay, well, we're closer to the end, but you can never tell when these things end, right? They never knew when the drachma in Rome would fail. They just knew that doing what they were doing was going to make it fail. And maybe I got my terminology wrong. Was it the drachma? Whatever they were using, where they were clipping the sides of the coin and taking more of the, taking more of the mineral value or the gold or silver value out of the coin. like fiat systems always fail. You're totally correct. Fiat systems always fail. You just don't know when. And it generally fails when people lose trust, like when the Roman soldiers lost trust in getting paid in these coins that were debasing in value. They stopped defending the empire. When will people lose trust in the gilt market? When will people lose trust in the US Treasury market? I don't know, but that is the danger. And when that happens, kaboom. So we're closer to that. I don't want it to happen tomorrow, but the danger is that it happens sooner than we think, because confidence is a fleeting thing. Confidence ends very quickly. And once it's gone, you can never get it back.
I mean, with that, in terms of the kind of the roadmap, I know like in terms of predicting when things happen is near to impossible. Like as you say, when you kind of look at the larger cycle of things, like if you look at the societal cycles of like the fourth turning or these kind of things, like we're nearing a sort of break point. And in
Yeah.
your head, are there any like trigger events that you see? I mean, like say like it's
Sure.
different, but say like the 2008, it would be like, oh, this kind of this dealer or this broker's gone
Yeah.
down. That's
So
gonna
it's going
have
to be the same thing. Great question, Satsuki. That's how I say your name, right?
yeah,
Satsuki. That's yeah,
perfect.
cool. That's sorry. So great question. So you never know, as I say, but it all evolves around credit. Because what is credit? Credit is a form of confidence. Credit is a form of trust. And when you lose that confidence, credit systems break down. And when credit systems break down, equity, which ranks subordinate in the capital structure to credit, meaning unless your debt is worth 100 cents on the dollar, your equity's worth zero. When you lose trust in the superior or senior claim, it's over for anything below it. So it's over for equity markets. It's over for derivatives. It's all about credit. And so much like the 2007 to 2009 credit crisis, the crisis that we are going to hit will be a credit crisis. And it will happen at the peripheral levels, fringes first. So you're seeing it in places like Argentina. Again, you're seeing it in Lebanon. You're seeing it in Turkey. A crisis in confidence in the value of the fiat denominated credit. And it will be like that, and it will be worse than the last one. And why is that? Well, very simply, because there's more debt in the system since 2008, 2009. Why is there more debt in the system? Well, they solved a debt Ponzi by issuing more debt. Okay. And you can't solve it that way. It doesn't work. Okay. It just brings you closer to the final chapter. So those are the things you look for. Things like credit default swap spreads, which is a measure of the confidence of the world in the ability of a counterparty like England or like the USA to meet their credit obligations without default. So that's why, having spent my entire life in credit, I'm comfortable in saying always watch the credit markets for the warning signals.
Just to play the role once again of, well, let's just say your lovely mother, she goes, Greg, but what is credit? Credit card? Like
Yeah.
what is
Why is
credit?
it that difficult? Okay, so first of all, my mom and dad actually never had a credit card. I could tell you a funny story about that, but let's not get derailed. But in the new society where everybody and their brother has a credit card or more than one credit card, imagine a entity, whether it's a corporation or a government or a person, paying off their current credit card by going and applying for a new credit card so it could pay the interest on the other credit cards and not go into default. Mom, how do you feel about that? Oh, Greg, who would run their finances like that? Well, Mom, every single government in the world runs their finances like that. Well, Greg, who are these fools? Mom, they are politicians, and politicians have never done anything good in their lives because they are career bureaucrats. Yeah, I've always felt that way about them too, Greg. Well, the reality is nobody wants to go into politics because nobody with a brain needs to have to deal with the situation that has been uh, built over the last 100 years, which is what, Greg? The situation is that the debt spiral is unsustainable, and anybody that goes into that position is doomed to fail. It's only math, Mom. Oh, Greg, I knew you were an engineer, and I know how much you love math. Yes, Mom, because math makes the world work. Oh, yes. Okay, Mom. Imagine if you had a credit card and you needed to issue another credit card just to pay off, or you need to apply and receive another credit card just to pay off that other credit. But Greg, I've never used credit in my whole life. Credit is bad. Well, Mom, credit's not bad. It's only bad if you can't control your addiction to credit.
Mm.
Oh, well, it's a good thing I didn't ever have a credit card in my life, isn't it, Greg? No, Mom, it's not that bad that you had zero credit cards. What it is bad is when you can't control your credit spending, when you don't have the discipline to live within your means in the here and now. Well, Greg, thank goodness your dad and I were very conservative individuals. Yes, Mom, I'm very blessed. But the problem with the new world is none of these cucktards have any discipline. They want everything for free. They borrow money. They'll leave it for the future to pay down. They're selfish people. That's right. They are selfish people, Greg. And I guess that's why they're politicians. Yes, because only people they go into politics are people with hubris and egos that want self gratification. That's right, Mom. So own Bitcoin. Yes, Greg, I understand why you love Bitcoin so much now.
Mm. And the other thing as well with politics is on the off chance that they are a good politician with some good intentions, when you're in power and you know that there's a vote coming up in, say, 3 years about whether or not you'll still be in
Oh,
power,
yeah.
and
Oh,
someone's like,
that's simple.
do you cut
No, dude, you got it. You got it.
cut
It's
your
that
debt in?
simple.
But no,
Yeah,
just
no,
take
you
out
got
all
it. No.
credit cards.
Oh, dude, you got
People.
it. You got it. It's that simple. So the system you can't. So I have a good friend in Canada. His name is Jeff Booth. I don't know if you know who Jeff is, but
We had him on the
if you
show.
don't, you've had him on the show. Okay, so it's beautiful because he wrote one of the most important books I've ever read. Okay, called The Price of Tomorrow, and I'm a huge fan of his, and I'm proud to call him a close friend and fellow Canadian. And my God, if you want to understand pure brilliance, you need to read his book. But the reality is he understands how politicians work as well. And politicians have a desire to get reelected. And you don't get reelected when you tell people, hey, I'm not going to give you money anymore, because the people are lazy and they think they're getting rich when in fact they're getting more poor by the government giving you money. But you can't create, stupid is as stupid does. And there's a lot of stupid people that get to vote. And therein we get the politicians that we deserve because stupid people are allowed to vote. So I don't want to go into all of that. I'll just tell you that we get what we deserve when we allow an 18-year-old cucktard kid who has never passed grade 10 math a vote with purple hair. And this is not shouting out the stupid woke individuals. It's shouting out the stupid people that have never learned mathematics that are allowed to vote for things like politicians in Canada. We have this knucklehead who says budgets balance themselves. That was the Prime Minister of Canada saying budgets balance themselves. My mother and father are disgusted by anybody who believes that a budget of any kind, whether it's a household budget, a corporate budget, or the budget of a country, they don't balance themselves, you failed Prime Minister, okay? You failed mathematics. You're an embarrassment. God darn you, you're hurting the future for our kids. And that's the reality of mathematics. So funny thing is, you need to get a driver's license to drive a car, but you don't have to get any sort of license to have a vote. Like, don't you think sometimes they should say, have you passed grade 11 math? No. Okay. You haven't passed grade 11 math? I don't think you should be allowed to vote. Just Greg Foss speaking, but I know that's somewhat, racist or any. Hey, math isn't racist, people. Mathematics is the base layer of language. And if you don't understand the base layer of language, you are operating with one hand held behind your back. Okay. So I know not everybody's good at mathematics, but understand this: budgets do not balance themselves. That is irresponsible fiscal management by the CEO of a country. And it's downright embarrassing.
I think one of the biggest kind of reflections of this, the sort of decisions that you think can't possibly be made, are say like when you hear or see the kind of news that, I don't know, there's X inflation, and so the country is going to put, say, another 400 million budget solving
Let's
the
stop.
inflation problem.
Let's stop.
Like,
it's absolutely a clown show. It's a clown show. So I think we need to get off the fact that we all know it's a clown show, and you have to take measures to protect yourself, because these people are leading us down the road to financial ruin.
And coming on to that note, this is something I did want to touch on, because whether you're a family or like, especially as a young person who's like trying to get into investing, like you obviously have a lot of options. You have your school, which is like just stick it in an index fund, which like, I mean, it's obviously the oldest way, but you could say like we're entering a slightly different 10 years now. And so I was wondering, like, how do you, from like a risk management perspective, actually actively go about, like, let's say you're in the shoes of, say, a 20-year-old who's just been given some savings. How do you think about allocating that for yourself?
All right. Well, let's make sure we understand that there's a lot of different 20 years old, 20, let's use the 25-year-old, okay? Because 25-year-old. I mean, if you've just been granted a whole bunch of savings, first thing you do is you thank the person that gave you all those savings. Because what are those savings? Those savings are a measure of the hard work that that person put into saving up this value, store of value that they have now granted to you. And God forbid you're a stupid fuck and you blow all that money that this other person had worked so hard saving for you. But that happens all the time. Let's not start with that person. Let's start with the 25-year-old who's struggling to save for the future and doesn't have a sugar daddy or a sugar mommy that has just given them a whole bunch of savings, okay? Within the context of that, as a 25-year-old, you're going to want to look very closely at Bitcoin as being a large portion of your savings account. Why? Because your savings account is probably very small. So when I say a large portion, I mean a large percentage portion. But in general, for someone who's older than 25 and has a net worth that's stored up, you're not going to go all in on Bitcoin. That's irresponsible risk management, but you have to own more than zero. So you see how we have to balance the equation here. You could be a 25-year-old kid with $10,000 to your name, which is a heck of a lot of money. Would I advise that young individual to go a heavy allocation into Bitcoin? Yes, I would. But let's say you're the same age person and you just got granted a couple of $1 million worth of store of value. Would I tell you to put all of that into Bitcoin? No, you're darn lucky that someone else worked so hard to give you their time and energy in the form of a store of value that you need to allocate that store of value a little more conservatively. Doesn't mean you own zero Bitcoin. It just means you're now dealing with a bigger pot, okay? And that is another way of me saying everybody needs to own Bitcoin. Everybody, from billionaires all the way down to paupers, okay? And that includes hedge funds, it includes pension funds, it includes government balance sheets. Everybody needs to own Bitcoin. Owning zero Bitcoin is more risky than having a proper allocation. What you need to do, though, is figure out where you are in this spectrum of life and store of value savings and everything, and figure out what is appropriate for you. And so everybody's a little different. I will just sum this up. The only wrong allocation to Bitcoin is owning zero, and then go from there.
Good answer. I want to pivot slightly. I want to come back to the sort of larger macro picture, but I want to pivot slightly to kind of you understand this deeply. You have strong feelings. How do you have much contact with kind of the people you used to be in finance with, and how do you think your the finance industry and fellow people in finance perspective is starting to change on this, and how much of them are even aware of how, like, do they sort of just think this is a problem for X years and not think about it, or is this also something that they're actively thinking about?
It depends. There's a range, right? I believe Jamie Dimon, who's the CEO of the largest bank in America, or the second largest bank, JP Morgan. So the CEO, he says Bitcoin is bad, but I think he is actually understands how much Bitcoin will challenge his business, and that's why it's bad. And even Jamie Dimon's daughter owns Bitcoin, and there's lots of people in JP Morgan that understand how valuable Bitcoin is. But again, it's it doesn't happen overnight. It's not like an on-off light switch. I've personally studied Bitcoin for thousands of hours, and I'm still learning. I can't expect some fiat cucktard that's entire salary depends on the fiat system not breaking to embrace a solution that anticipates the fiat system breaking, right? So some of my friends are further down the learning spectrum than others. Some of them are pure stupid, and some of them are actually evil. They don't want Bitcoin to succeed because they're milking the gravy train of the fiat Ponzi. And, they don't, they're selfish. It comes right down to it. Because, in the world, I would say 85% of the world are takers, okay? 85% of the world are takers, and 15% of the world are givers. It's just, this is a Foss statistic. But on Wall Street and Bay Street and Bank Street in London, 99% of those guys are takers, okay? Take. And there might be 1% givers. So that's the kind of people we're talking to. Whereas Bitcoiners are the flip. Bitcoiners are 85% of Bitcoiners are givers. They're the best, most amazing community I've ever met. They want a better world for our children. They are not greedy. They're not doing this as a get-rich-quick scheme. This is a long, low-time preference endeavor. And that's the people I like. I hate Wall Street, fucking greedy, cucktard, fiat Ponzi masters like Jamie Dimon. Okay? And Jamie Dimon's a smart guy. He probably knows that he's going to lose to Bitcoin. He just wants to delay it as long as possible. And then there's old idiots like Charlie Munger and Warren Buffett. Well, time will take care of that, okay? Like, I'm sorry, Charlie Munger, don't buy green bananas, okay? And you know why you say that expression, Tatsuki? Have you ever heard that? Don't buy green bananas? Because you won't be alive long enough to eat them, because you might die before they ripen, right? I mean, that's how old Charlie Munger is. So time will take care of stupid people like Charlie Munger. And I hate to say it, but that's just statistics. So Charlie Munger shouldn't buy green bananas. Warren Buffett understands he has benefited tremendously from the fiat Ponzi. And then there's people like you who are young and eventually will inherit the wealth of the world and understand how beautiful Bitcoin is, and then we'll solve the problem. But it isn't a light switch. It takes time. It takes education. And that's where we are right now. I'm sorry to swear, by the way. Am I allowed to swear on your
Yeah, yeah,
program?
you're welcome. I've seen you trying to hold back. I don't want to inhibit your speech. So by
Well, I like to say I swear because I care. And sometimes, having worked on a trading desk for my whole life, I'm actually very polite as it goes, as traders go. Like I let the occasional F bomb slip out, more often than some people would like. But the truth is, it takes me a lot of tongue. I got to bite my tongue a lot with it to not swear like I used to on the trading desk. But that being said, look, I swear because I care. This is very serious, okay? And I really dislike people who are disingenuous and not educating people as to the reality of the fiat Ponzi. I don't care if you don't like Bitcoin or not. Understand that the fiat Ponzi is a system that is flawed, that causes so much pain and suffering in the world as it exists today.
Hmm. One thing that kind of people will say to me often is like, oh, but like I've got no use for kind of Bitcoin today or XYZ. And I'm always kind of like, I mean, it doesn't matter whether you have use for it today. It's your insurance policy.
Attaboy.
It's like you're in a building and a fire exit has just been built for
Oh,
you.
yeah.
Like there's no
Yeah.
point getting emotional about whether the fire exit is
No.
good or bad. It's a fire exit. And so I was wondering in terms of like obviously the worst case fire is something like Weimar Germany, or it's like the collapse of Rome. Is there a good scenario in which
Yeah.
it sort of unwinds itself? And what does that look like?
Well, okay, so I'm not sure how deep down the rabbit hole you went with Jeff Booth, but he and I talk about this all the time. And we both envisage the perfect solution, and it may not happen this way, is an orderly transformation, okay, to some sort of Bitcoin standard where, in fact, fiat currencies continue to exist, but not as stores of value, okay? Bitcoin, in my opinion, will become the apex predator as the store of value of choice of the world, overtaking US Treasury bonds. But it won't happen overnight unless US Treasury bonds go to zero because a failed Treasury auction or a default of US Treasuries, God forbid. That could happen, but it's not my preferred outcome. My preferred outcome is much like a network transfer that proceeds orderly over time. When I say a network transfer, just think if you're working at a company, you decide to switch from MS DOS to iOS. You run two networks in parallel for a while. You don't come in on a Monday morning having shut down your DOS operating system on a Sunday night. You operate both of them in parallel for a while to make sure that the kinks are ironed out of your new system. And I think that's what I would like to see happen in the Bitcoin ecosystem. Not guaranteed it would happen that way, because the risk of the old system failing increases exponentially as more idiot politicians do more stupid stuff and add more debt or add more gasoline to already this fire that's burning and you need your insurance. These clowns are out there pouring fucking gasoline on the fire, not water. They're pouring gasoline on the fire. So the value of your insurance is going higher, even if it's not reflected in a unit price yet.
Mm.
I'm telling you, the value of that insurance is increasing by watching things like credit default swaps in the market. And I can calculate an intrinsic value of Bitcoin using credit default swaps. And I'm telling you, Bitcoin is stupid cheap insurance. Most people don't understand that yet, though. And it's a process. So my preferred outcome is, we keep educating, we keep going along. The politicians don't pour too much gasoline on the fire. That becomes a bigger and bigger risk, though. So dollar cost average, always put your store of value into Bitcoin, a portion of it anyway. And you're doing this for the future down the road 10 years, not 10 months, not 10 weeks. This is a low time preference, long game. This is a marathon, not a sprint. I, in my case, am 60 years old. I'm doing this for my children. All right. And I'm doing it for my children's children. Greg Foss is going to be just fine whether or not Bitcoin succeeds or not. But there's a ton of people in the world that aren't going to be. And I'm lucky to have worked hard, and I'm taking my hard work that's represented in stores of value on different assets, and I'm putting a good portion of my store of value, time, and energy into Bitcoin for my kids. Yeah, for my kids.
I want to touch on Bitcoin's slightly less able father. Well, you could maybe call it more stepfather, but the old store of value, it being gold. And
Yep.
I wonder, like, gold has its limits, but currently is like you see central banks kind of ramping up their buying of it because I guess that's their form of insurance for this. Do you see within that transition or anywhere in the middle gold playing a part? And is gold
Yeah,
something that you also hold?
I do own gold. And I have a very good friend and business partner, Larry Lepard, who is a converted gold bug. Lawrence, if you don't follow him, I would love you to follow him. A good man, a couple of years older than me, very smart risk manager. And he realizes that Bitcoin is actually better than gold. Why? Well, it's more transferable, it's more portable, it's more verifiable, it's more divisible. It's everything better than gold. But you got 2,000 plus years of history, actually 7,000 years of history
A long time.
in the gold market. You're not going to get rid of that overnight. But we need to embrace the gold bugs, Bitcoiners, not, in my opinion, deride them, because they've understood why you own gold. For 2,000 years, they've understood it. It's just that there's now a better gold, okay? And it's not to say sell all of your other gold. No, in fact, don't sell any of your other gold until you've sold a portion of your bonds to buy Bitcoin. You fucking knuckleheads, don't you understand that bonds are the problem? The gilt market meltdown that you had in London, driven by something called liability-driven investing, LDI, where your idiot bank governor had to get on TV and rescue the pension plans, whatever his name is, the Indian guy, all right? Rishi had to fucking get on TV to rescue the system that he's in the process of blowing up. That's where you take your allocation from. You don't take your allocation to Bitcoin from your gold holdings. You take your allocation from your bond and your gilt holdings, where that knucklehead is running the show. Can you imagine having your faith in that? This guy's a fucking clown. He's a clown, people. If you don't understand, he's a clown. You are watching a circus and you don't even realize you're watching a circus. Take your allocation to Bitcoin from your gilt portfolio, not from your gold portfolio. Hope that helps.
Mm. You brought in an interesting question here, which is like, obviously, if you do have cash, the biggest problem with this system is you don't know where to bloody put it, because it's like you can't leave it in cash for too long.
How much Bitcoin do you own? If you own 0 Bitcoin, you take it from cash, because that's just like bonds. It's just a bond with a 0 maturity. Okay. That's the same thing. A bond is a fiat contract with a term to maturity, and cash is a fiat contract with no fucking term to maturity. They're the same goddamn thing, people. If you don't understand the difference between cash and a bond, you failed fucking mathematics. Like, I'm sorry to swear so much, but here's the thing. I guess I realized how much I hated the negative interest rate environment that you idiot Europeans were operating in, where you actually didn't understand the mathematics of taking negative yields, which aren't an asset, by the way. They become a liability. Negative yields become a liability, and then you lever that to enhance your returns. You guys are an embarrassment to risk fucking management, okay? You stupid gilt managers that did liability-driven investing to make a negative yield try to appear positive. You should be fired. You should be sent out. You should not be rescued by that Rishi clown, okay? This is an embarrassment to risk management. Sorry, man. You can edit all this out if you want. but this guy is an absolute fucking buffoon. Okay, a buffoon.
It's all right. I'll keep it in. I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, what's mental as well is how long it stayed like that, even as kind of inflation's rocketing up.
Oh,
It's still like, oh, maybe we'll have a
such an
meeting.
embarrassment, such an embarrassment, and then has to be bailed out by taxpayer more money that just makes this balloon expand to the point where the next pop is going to be, you know, explosive and so detrimental to everybody. It is a clown show, and it's built by people who don't understand mathematics.
Mm. I want to come to Japan slightly because Japan people often talk about as being on a similar path, but kind of X steps in forward. They've got much higher debt to GDP. I
Yeah.
mean, the demographic is like aging, they've flatlined, and all this kind of stuff. And I mean, where do you see the path forward for them? And is that kind of the roadmap you see for, say, like the UK, or
No, no.
does it
Well,
differ?
first of all, they're savers. Okay, it's a nation of savers, whereas the USA is a nation of consumers. They don't have near the savings power of the or the savings discipline of the Japanese. The Japanese still have a trade surplus, not a trade deficit, where the USA is a trade deficit. So there's a marked difference between the USA and Japan. And anyone who tries to use the Japan model doesn't understand macroeconomics and the very simple equation that Y equals C plus I plus G plus net exports. Okay. If you don't even know what that equation is, you got to go back to macro econ 101. But when you have net exports as positive versus net exports as negative, that changes the entire GDP model. If you don't understand how that works, I guess I can't convince you that, not everyone can be a macroeconomist or economicist, or however you say that word. Not everybody can be a hedge fund manager. Put your money with a professional that will manage money professionally for you, because you props shouldn't be managing your own money if you didn't understand what I just said. And most people don't understand what I just said. Y equals C plus I plus G plus net exports. But look it up, see what that formula means. And if you don't understand the difference between Japan and the USA, well, you got some work to do. You got some work to do.
I want to kind of come, you mentioned professional there, and that's obviously another difficult thing because when you're choosing a professional, like they're probably going to be opposed to Bitcoin and this sort of
Nah,
stuff.
some of them are, some of them aren't. And this is how
How,
you could filter it. But look, here's the key thing. Again, if you're 25 years old and you have $10,000 to your name, do it yourself. Just buy Bitcoin. It's probably that simple. You just buy Bitcoin religiously until you get up to a dollar value of Bitcoin of one Bitcoin. And if you get to that 30,000 US dollar level in today's dollars, you've done your work, you put that aside, you never touch it. That is your store of value. And then you start diversifying that. But until you're there, as a 25-year-old, focus on that. If you're a 25-year-old that's just been granted 10 million quid, or I'm not sure what a quid is, okay? 10 million pounds, I know that's value. What is a quid, by the way? A quid is like a penny or something like that. It's anyway.
100 pennies, yeah.
100 pennies is one quid, so it's like a dollar. Okay. Oh, and then what's a sterling, for God's sakes? Like, what's the difference between a quid and a sterling? Is there any difference?
Yeah, no, we don't. Yeah, it's just like sterling pound. We don't really use it. I think it's like, oh, it's like old language, but yeah, it's basically a pound. Like it's
Okay. So
one pound
here's what I know.
sterling.
All right. Trying to keep things simple. If someone just bequeathed you or gifted you a million pounds, then you should take that money and give it to a professional. If you don't know what I just said, that Y equals C plus I plus G plus net exports. All right. And if you do understand what I just said and you don't understand Bitcoin, take it to a fucking professional who does understand Bitcoin so that they'll get you an allocation into Bitcoin that's greater than zero. And then if you're too stupid to do that, go blow all your fucking money on, what's that guy that was the famous English footballer that said, he goes, I spent 80% of my net worth on George something. I spent 80% of my net worth on wine, women, and I don't know, nightclubs. And he goes, and the other 20% I wasted. He was fucking hilarious. Okay. It's George, a famous footballer called George something. And he was,
George Best, maybe.
Yeah. That's him. That's him. He goes, yeah, people say I wasted 80% of my money. He said, no, I had fun with 80% of my money. The other 20% I wasted. Now, look, I'm not telling you to live life like that. You have to understand that if you're lucky enough to get a gift from your parents or your grandparents of their hard work, because that's what it was. That's the money that they're giving you is a reflection of their hard work. Don't be an idiot, please. Understand that this, out of respect for your benefactor, is their hard work, and you owe it to them to understand how to preserve that capital and grow that capital responsibly for the future, so that maybe you can turn around and give it to somebody as well. And that's what Bitcoin is to me. It's the generational wealth preservation. And that's why I love it so much.
In terms of kind of the debate of active versus passive and giving it to professional versus, say, just sticking it in a global index fund, I mean, where do you sit on that argument?
Well, having spent my entire life as an active portfolio manager, I hate passive portfolio allocation, because that's where you get stupid allocation of capital using passive allocation. But the world has been convinced by Vanguard marketing that paying fees on index or on money management is stupid. I'll take the other side of that. I used to work for a very funny CIO who said, you pay them peanuts, you get monkeys. Okay. Well, you pay a passive fucking index manager peanuts because it's low fees. You get monkeys managing your money, and you deserve what you get when you get the results, where these idiots own a company like Western Union just because it's in the index. Okay. Everybody knows Western Union's fucking done. It's over. Okay. Yet it still has a market cap that doesn't reflect its true risk because it's in this thing called the S&P 500 index. And every time some stupid passive investor buys the S&P 500, a portion of that $500 goes into buying Western Union stock. You guys are morons. You're fucking stupid. Okay. But that's what passive investment management does to you. I prefer to take the active investment management side, but go fuck yourselves. I don't give a shit. If you don't want to put your money with active investment managers, that's another indication that you are probably not the sharpest tool in the shed. Okay.
Brutal but true. I like your answer. And I want to kind of touch on like academics. It obviously, I mean, once you start learning about things like Bitcoin and this kind of stuff, like the divergence between the general media and then what you actually hear. But as you say, like the academic cucks or whatever you want to call them. I mean, how do you think about university and say the education of now? Are you like, yeah, sure, like university, or like, because I asked Greg a similar question. He was kind of just like whatever she wants kind of thing. But I wonder if you had a different view as to going.
Well, sorry, you said when you asked Greg?
Sorry, not Greg, Jeff.
Oh, Jeff Booth. Okay, whatever she wants. What do you mean by whatever she wants?
Like whatever she wants to do, she can do kind of thing. He didn't.
Her daughter, his daughter.
Yeah,
okay.
And I was wondering, do you have a stronger opinion on, say, whether they go to university? Like, if they were, I want to go to university.
Yes.
Study economics. Are you going to be like, son, I failed myself?
No, not at all. No, why? Okay, so what does university teach you? All right. First of all, the most important thing you get from university is meeting other university kids and having fun in life. Okay, because once you graduate from university, life goes downhill in terms of fun. Okay, if you don't know this, damn it, you went to either the wrong university, or you've never gone to university, or you don't know how to have fun. But going to university is really, really fun if you do it properly. Now, it costs something. It's not free, but you got to weigh that. What else does university do for value? Well, if you're not fucking the dog the whole time, while you're at university, meaning you're trying to actually learn. It teaches you time management and discipline. You grow up at university. You get evaluated on your work ethic. You get evaluated on your intelligence. You get your first experience into real world. But you don't get a lot of true real world value out of it, except time management, discipline, and man, oh man, is it fun if you're able to balance having fun at sports or partying and those other two, you're successful. And if you want to do that, I'm all for it. And all three of my children, I've paid for their university education. Is it worth the money I paid for it? Yeah, I think so. But sometimes it's not, where you get these spoiled little kids that go to school and they don't do anything. They end up becoming cocaine addicts. And guess what? Their dads work on Wall Street and they get a job on Wall Street anyway. And they become real coke addicts because everybody on Wall Street is some form of a coke addict. They just don't know it. Okay. Whether you're a coke addict because you actually are abusing the substance, or you're a coke addict because you have that adrenaline rush of working on Wall Street, it's all the same thing. The end of the day, though, I would never tell anybody not to go to university, provided you're going to get the value out of it the way I just laid it out. Is it purely worth it from a learning perspective? No, you can go online and learn all of that shit almost for free online. But when you're 18 years old and all of a sudden you become 18 and you turn 28 without a 10-year pretty fun time in life, I'm not sure if you've missed out on some pretty valuable experience. Okay. You can disagree with me. That's fine. This is whatever the world, that's why freedom is, to do whatever you think. But I think I agree with Jeff there. If my kids want to go to school, I always told them I will pay for it. As soon as you stop going to school, you owe me rent. Okay. It's that simple. You stop going to school, you're going to pay for your rent. You're going to pay for your own gas. You're going to pay for your own food. As long as you go to school, your father is paying for it, because that's what my parents did for me. I'll reevaluate the outcome, and you can't do it right away. It's how they, I still have friends. I'm 60 years old. A buddy of mine from Boston was just in town yesterday, and we had a great time. And I see him fairly regularly, but I know he's a friend that I never would have had if I didn't go to school. So that's value. That's subjective value that you can't recreate by going to school online.
Interesting take. I mean, yeah, that was definitely biggest thing for me. We're all kind of like, I had no idea what we're kind of learning, but we're making good friends. You're having a good laugh. And it does teach you. It's the first time when the teacher's not like, you have to get this in by X. Have you done your homework? It's like, you're in control of your time. You choose.
Oh, yeah. You can choose not to get the assignment in. And then guess what? You get kicked out of school and you're a buffoon. Like, I just, anyway, let's try and wrap this up, because I'm not looking at my time. I'm thinking of your listeners, and there's always only so much Greg Foss people can take before they have to turn this fucking moron from Canada off. Like, you know what I mean?
So sure. I mean, I guess to kind of start to wrap up, I want to quickly touch on the kind of the weak spots in the world, and then I guess we can sort of wrap up, because I know, like, in terms of credit default swaps and all this kind of thing, like, one of the biggest kind of G7 countries you look at is Canada. And I'd like you to kind of paint us like a bit of a picture of the world as you see from a risk standpoint.
All right, Canada doesn't matter. We're like a fucking rounding error. See ya. We think we matter. We don't. We're less important than the state of California. And we have a prime minister who's a buffoon. So Canada's basically done. Okay, we're fucking baked. But we don't matter that much anyway. Okay, so then you move up the pecking order. Italy, fuck, see ya. France, another moron. Britain, whatever. You guys are fucked. Okay, the only people that matter, there's only two countries that really matter: the USA and the BRICS. Okay, so You got the USA and you got the BRICS, and everybody else who's operating on the USA standard is baggage. We're like fucking dragging down the USA, okay? Because we're run by a bunch of morons like our prime minister and your Rishi guy and Macron and all of these people who don't understand mathematics and are just a bunch of, you know, four-year term puppets. So who matters? The United States. Who is against the United States? Russia, China, and the other BRICS. And that's what it's going to come down to. And the first nation to embrace Bitcoin as the store of value that's going to replace US Treasury bonds as the global reserve asset is going to win. And I'm a Canadian, and I want the USA to win because Canada can't win. We're just not in that position. Even if we were the smartest person, we adopted the El Salvador standard, it would help Canada, but it wouldn't change the world. But the USA can actually change the world. And if the USA doesn't do it, well, the BRICS, I think, are going to do it. And maybe that's the change in world order that is the next century or whatever. But understand the power of that the BRICS nations are now bigger than the G7 nations combined. I'm not sure if you knew that from a GDP perspective.
I didn't know that. No,
okay, so
mental to think about.
You guys better get your fucking shit together. And Britain is so far fucking gone, it's not funny. Okay, Canada's a basket case. I think Britain's even fucking worse. But neither of us matter. Okay, so take your pride and take all this shit and pack it and stuff it and realize you got to go with the mathematics of the world. And right now, it's the G7 versus the BRICS. And the BRICS are growing, and the G7 are a bunch of buffoons walking around worried about their woke-tard policies. I would just suggest that follow the growth, follow the money, follow the smart leadership. Those guys are playing the long game. Russia and China play the long game. And the G7 countries get caught up in the short game. So I want the G7 countries to embrace the long game, which is called Bitcoin. Because I love capitalism. I love freedom. I believe that Britain, did you know this? Actually, there's no way you know this. My granddad was awarded the Order of the British Empire for his service in both world wars. Okay. The OBE, Order of the British Empire, is one of the most prestigious medals of honor that Britain awards. Only 800 non-British citizens have been awarded the OBE. And my granddad is one of them.
Wow.
When he worked closely with the Royal Air Force and the Royal Canadian Air Force in World War I and World War II. I'm very proud of that. And I'm not belittling England. Fucking amazing country, amazing people, work ethic, Winston Churchill. But you guys have lost it a bit, okay? You've lost that pride. You're just pandering to the woke-tard fucking narrative of, you know, Ricky, whatever his name is, running around, printing money and trying to be some sort of, you know, well, whatever. I'm just saying it's an avenue for failure, and it really pains me. But you got to tell the truth. I tend to tell the truth. If it hurts, well, the truth hurts sometimes. Learn mathematics.
I want to just quickly say, for whoever doesn't know BRICS is pretty, what is it, Brazil, Russia, India, China. Yeah, they're those countries for people.
Yeah, South Africa is the S. You know, but just understand the big ones are Brazil, Russia, India, and China. India, obviously,
India's. I mean, I know. Yeah, we should probably close it. But in terms of like China and India, like India population-wise is like one of the few countries who's actually kind of got a fairly good-looking population curve, aside from like a lot of African countries.
Yeah.
Whereas China like is plateauing like this year.
And it's plateauing because they instituted a birth policy that might or might not be over regulatory, but let's not go there. Okay. I
Mm.
probably am. You're going to get so much hate mail because you just interviewed me. So I'm going to say this. Okay. Send all your hate mail to Tatsuki. And that's just it. Look, I have an opinion. Opinions are like sphincters. Every asshole has one. Okay. So I'm an asshole with an opinion. If you don't like what I'm saying, just go fuck yourself. I'm just telling you the truth, okay? That's all I can do is tell you the truth.
Well, Greg, yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure and extremely entertaining, properly meeting you and interviewing you. And yeah, it's just as fun as I was expecting. Um, so here's to Rishi or Ricky Sunak, whatever you want to call him. And yeah, I guess I mean, what is your? I mean, I kind of probably know what you're going to say, but what if you could leave your reader, well, with the listeners who haven't already clicked off screaming and already emailing you terrible stuff? What would you like to leave
Is
them?
this live, by the way? This wasn't
No,
live, was it?
luckily it's
Okay.
not.
All right. All
What would
right.
you like to leave them with?
Oh, look, I'm good with it, man. All I will say is I've survived for 35 years, and all I bring to the table is 35 years of mistakes. Okay. If you think you're going to make every decision you make is going to be the right decision, no, it's not the right decisions that you have to manage. It's the wrong decisions, and don't let those wrong decisions kill you.
Mm,
So I'm asking you to study Bitcoin, and you may not embrace it at the outset, but I'm asking you to do your homework. Don't dismiss it because Jamie Dimon says to dismiss it. Don't dismiss it because a mainstream media outlet in the UK says dismiss it. Do your own work, be your own person, make your own decision. Because it's your mistakes that kill you. And you always have to manage your mistakes. And it would be my opinion that not owning Bitcoin could be the worst mistake of your life. So do the work. And if you've done your work and you still don't own Bitcoin, look, then we agree to disagree. But you need to understand it's the fiat Ponzi that is the danger. And you need to protect yourself against the fiat Ponzi. And I don't care how you do it. It's my opinion, though, that Bitcoin is the best tool to do that. And that's about all I could leave you with. Do it
thank you,
for your
Greg.
kids. Don't do it for your selfish old fat white ass bastard like me. Okay? Do it for your children.
Thank you, Greg. It's been wonderful. And if people want to follow you, I'm guessing your Twitter is probably the go-to place,
I
isn't it?
think my Twitter handle is probably going to get taken away. I don't know. I'm kidding, but yeah, at Foss, Greg Foss is the best way. I try and tell the truth. I try and give positive reinforcement as well. I'm not a negative guy. I'm just an honest guy who's done this for 35 years. Guess what? You don't get ahead in the pits trading on Wall Street and Bay Street and Bank Street by being a nice guy. You get ahead by telling the truth, managing risk, and trying to help other people understand the dangers that they are facing without them realizing it. So
Mm.
many people have no clue that we are headed to imminent disaster because it's only mathematics. So you got to protect yourself. Thanks again for having me.
Mm. Thank you, Greg. It's been an absolute pleasure. And yeah, hopefully see you in person someplace, maybe Prague or something. So yeah, thank you, Greg, and have a great
All right, my friend. Yeah, let's do this again if you ever want to. If you don't get too much hate mail, we'll do it again sometime.
I'd absolutely love that. Thank you, Greg.
All right, my friend. Thanks.
See you.
See you, buddy. Bye.